the Accessible Art History YouTube channel. In this week's video, I'm exploring 5 must-see masterpieces at the Egyptian Museum in Cairo. Not only is it the largest museum in Africa, but it's the oldest museum in the Middle East. It was hard narrowing down my choices to 5 masterpieces in the museum's collections because it contains some of the most important artifacts relating to Egyptian history. So, if you want to see what I picked, keep on watching. Before I dive into the objects, I think it's important to discuss the history of the Egyptian Museum itself. As I mentioned a moment ago, this museum is the oldest in the Middle East. In 1835, the Egyptian government opened a museum near the Izikba Gardens, though it was later moved to the Cairo Citadel. Sadly, the entirety of this collection was given to Archduke Maximilian of Austria, who was also later the Emperor of Mexico, and it now resides in the Kunsthistorisches Museum in Vienna. A few years later, the museum was re-established in an abandoned warehouse. This was one of the first missions of the newly formed Antiquities Department. Due to the warehouse's proximity to the Nile River, though, it flooded annually, so objects inside were always under threat of being destroyed by water. So in 1895, an international contest was held to help find an architect to design a new space to serve as the Egyptian Museum. Marcel Dujon, a French architect, won, and his design was inaugurated in 1902. It is located in Tahrir Square and remains an iconic building in the city today. During the Egyptian Revolution in 2011, the museum was looted. Several mummies were destroyed and around 50 objects were stolen. Half of them have since been returned, but the hunt is still on for the remaining objects. Although we're talking about the Egyptian Museum today, I would be remiss if I didn't discuss the construction of the Grand Egyptian Museum. Announced in 2002, this space was envisioned as a second space to showcase the fascinating history of Egypt. Setbacks such as the Arab Spring revolutions and the COVID-19 pandemic have delayed its opening, which is now set for late 2023 or early 2024. One of the highlights of this new museum will be a space dedicated solely to the discovery and object of Tutankhamun's tomb. This is why I won't be including those objects in today's video. The rest of the collection, about 13,000 pieces, will be selected from the vast collection of the original Egyptian Museum and moved to the new Grand Egyptian Museum. Alright, now that I've explained the history of the Egyptian Museum, let's dive into my 5 must-see masterpieces. I'm going to kick things off with a monolith statue that can't be missed, literally. Standing at an impressive 23 feet or 7 meters tall, the statue shows Pharaoh Amenhotep III and his great royal wife and queen Ti sitting side by side. He wears the traditional clothing of a pharaoh and his hands are placed on his lap. The queen has her arm wrapped around her husband in a show of support. One of the fascinating parts of the statue is that Amenhotep and Ti are shown as the same size. This is highly unusual because, in general, queens were usually shown as smaller. This speaks to her importance as a consort. There are also 3 smaller female statues representing 3 of the couple's daughters. Interestingly, the statue was found in fragments. Archaeological digs and repatriation have brought many of the pieces together. Today, the colossal statue is about 70% complete, with restoration aiding in the visualization. Amenhotep III was a powerful pharaoh of the 18th dynasty during the New Kingdom period. His reign is seen as one of the most successful because he led Egypt to reaching its peak in both power and artistic tradition. The statue was likely carved during his Sed festival. This was a celebration of the pharaoh's continued reign over Egypt. It was installed at Amenhotep's mortuary temple. This was a common practice in ancient Egypt. The afterlife was a key part of their religion, and many people, especially pharaohs, began building their tombs long before they expected to die. Unfortunately, the temple itself doesn't survive. It was close to floodplains, and within a few centuries of construction, it was deconstructed to provide building materials for other places. Although the subjects of this next masterpiece weren't royal, they played a huge part in ancient Egyptian history. Yuya and Tuya were a married couple who lived during the 18th dynasty of the New Kingdom period. Yuya held several high positions in court, and his wife Tuya was from a noble family. Their daughter Ti married Amenhotep III and is the same queen I mentioned with the last masterpiece. It's also possible that they were the parents of Ai, the father of Queen Nefertiti. The joint tomb of Yuya and Tuya is one of the most magnificent ever found. In fact, until the discovery of their great-grandson, Pharaoh Tutankhamun's tomb, it was considered to be the most intact and stunning ever discovered. Known as KV56, it was the first tomb discovered in situ, meaning it hadn't been disturbed in 3,000 years. When it was open, one of the archaeologists described it as, quote, "The chamber was dark as dark can be and extremely hot. We held up our candles, but they gave so little light, and so dazzled our eyes that we could see nothing except the glitter of gold." 2 of the magnificent pieces that found in the tomb were the golden mummy masks of the couple. They are covered in gold leaf and fairly stylized. However, there's a hint of their individual personalities in the eyes. Yuya's mask is covered almost entirely in gold leaf with a hint of blue around the eyes. However, Tuya's mask wears a typical broad collar decorated with turquoise and carnelian. Both of these objects speak to the power and wealth of Egypt's 18th dynasty. Menkara was a pharaoh who ruled during the 4th dynasty of the Old Kingdom, around 2532 to 2503 BCE. He was the son of the pharaoh Khafre and is best known for commissioning one of the 3 Great Pyramids of Egypt. The Pyramid of Menkara, the smallest of the 3, showcases his architectural prowess and dedication to the afterlife. Although Menkara's reign was relatively short, it's believed to have been marked by stability and prosperity. His reign saw the continuation of monumental construction and religious activities, contributing to the flourishing of ancient Egypt's Old Kingdom period. Menkara's legacy endures through his pyramid and his statues, which reflect his regal and divine authority as pharaoh. The Menkara Triad is a fascinating sculpture that features Pharaoh Menkara standing tall and regal in the center, and he's flanked by 2 divinities. The deities are the goddess Hathor and the god Horus. Hathor, depicted as a cow goddess with a sun disk, symbolized love, motherhood, and protection. Horus, represented as a falcon, was the god of kingship and the sky. This composition highlights the pharaoh's connection and divine legitimacy as a ruler in the eyes of ancient Egyptians. This work is celebrated for its exceptional artistry and attention to detail. Standing at approximately 142 centimeters or 4 feet 8 inches tall, the sculpture was meticulously carved from gray wax stone, a material known and used because of its durability. The figures are idealized and have balanced proportions, which convey a sense of authority and timelessness. The sculptor's skill rendering of intricate jewelry, intricate hairstyles, and hieroglyphic inscriptions demonstrate the expertise of ancient Egyptian artisans. This work also holds rich religious significance. In ancient Egypt, the pharaoh was considered an intermediary between the mortal realm and the divine world, bridging the gap between humans and God. The Menkara Triad symbolizes this divine association, and it portrayed the pharaoh in the company of important deities. This reinforces his legitimate rule in the eyes of ancient Egyptians. The Narmer Palette holds profound historical and cultural significance as a representation of the unification of Upper and Lower Egypt. This happened around 3100 BCE. Carved from a single piece of schist, this palette measures approximately 64 centimeters or 25 inches in height, and it showcases an intricate and detailed relief carving on both sides. It was discovered on a dig in Hierapolis, which is modern-day Qom al-Ahmar, and can tell us a lot about Egypt's unification. This work serves as a powerful testament to the early dynastic period, illustrating the transition from a fragmented region to centralized powerful kingdom. The artwork tells a vivid story primarily through symbolism and iconography. On one side, the ruler Narmer, who is sometimes identified as Pharaoh Mensis, is depicted in a ceremonial manner. He wears the crown of both Upper and Lower Egypt, and he's smiting a foe. The reverse side of the palette portrays Narmer in a more naturalistic form. He's wearing only the white crown of Upper Egypt, and he's overlooking a decapitated enemy. The portrayal highlights his authority and control over his subjects, as well as his divine connection and role in maintaining cosmic order. This is further enforced by the fact that he's the largest figure on both sides of the palette. We call this hierarchy of scale, which essentially means the bigger you are, the more important you are. Palettes like this one would have been used to mix cosmetics. Typically, these objects would have just been a flat piece of stone. Fat and pigment would be ground together to create the makeup that would then be applied to the face and eyes. Black pigment, often from charcoal, would be used to help absorb the sun's bright rays, much like American football players do today. Sometimes women would use ground malachite to create a stunning blue-green color. However, given the intricacies of this palette, Egyptologists have theorized it would have been used to make cosmetics to apply to cult statues of divinities in temples. The Merneptus Stele, also known as the Israel Stele or Victory Stele of Merneptah, is an ancient Egyptian inscription that holds significant historical and archaeological importance. It was created during the reign of Pharaoh Merneptah, who ruled around 1213 to 1203 BCE during the 19th dynasty. The stele is made of a large slab of black granite measuring approximately 3.5 feet or 1.1 meters in height. The inscription on the Merneptah Stele provides crucial insights into the geopolitics of the ancient Near East and has garnered attention due to its reference to a region called Israel. This mention is particularly notable as it's one of the earliest known references of the Israelites outside of the Bible. The stele commemorates Pharaoh Merneptah's military victories, including his successful campaign in Canaan. The inscription boasts of his triumphs over various city-states and groups, illustrating his prowess and dominance in the region. The mention of Israel is a brief but significant, representing a presence of an entity that was notable enough to be included alongside other regional powers. Merneptah was an Egyptian pharaoh who ruled during the 19th dynasty of the New Kingdom period. He was the 13th son of his predecessor, Ramses II, who you might know as Ramses the Great, and he ascended the throne at the relatively advanced age in his 60s. Merneptus' reign was marked by various military campaigns and diplomatic activities. One of the most notable aspects of his rule is the successful military campaign in Canaan that I just mentioned. He also engaged with diplomatic exchanges and interactions with neighboring powers, as evidenced by his diplomatic correspondence with the Hittites. His reign saw both military triumph and an effort to maintain Egypt's influence and stability in the ancient Near East. The Egyptian Museum is chock full of amazing artifacts from ancient Egypt. It was difficult to choose 5 masterpieces, but I believe these objects both exemplify the collection and the amazing history of a great civilization.